So far, we have discussed two consequences that can follow operant behaviors: reinforcement and punishment. But there are actually four types of consequences that can follow operant behaviors, and that's what we'll talk about in these lectures: the four types of contingencies. And we call these contingencies because the behavior is contingent upon the consequence. The behavior is dependent upon the consequence, or conditional based upon the consequence that follows the behavior. So we've already discussed reinforcement. And with reinforcement, the response leads to the delivery of a reinforcer, and that reinforcer then increases the likelihood that the behavior will occur again. Now, reinforcement can be positive or negative. And the thing to remember with this is positive does not mean good, negative does not mean bad. With positive, something is given, presented, or added. Negative means that something is taken away or stopped. So the second consequence that we've already discussed is punishment. With punishment, the response or the behavior leads to the delivery of a punisher, and that punisher then weakens or decreases the likelihood that that behavior will occur in the future. And again, positive means that something is given, presented, or added. Negative means that something is taken away or stopped. So when you combine those elements, you get our four contingencies, or four different types of consequences that can follow operant behaviors. We have positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, positive punishment, and negative punishment. And again, remember that positive means that something is being given, added, or presented. Negative means that something is being stopped or taken away. Reinforcement always increases the behavior that it follows. Punishment always decreases or weakens the behavior that it follows. So let's discuss each of these four types of consequences. First, positive reinforcement. So positive reinforcement means that something is given that will strengthen or increase the behavior. So examples of positive reinforcements that can follow a behavior, these will be things like tokens. So a student shows a behavior that you want to increase, and you reward that student by giving them a token that they can redeem for some type of prize. Money is a positive reinforcer. So you show up for your job and you receive the positive reinforcer of getting your paycheck. And praise is also a positive reinforcer. You give somebody praise, so that's the positive part because you're giving them praise. And as a result of being given praise, their behavior increases. So again, positive reinforcement, you're giving something, you're adding something, you're presenting something that will reinforce or increase the behavior that it follows. Negative reinforcement, you are taking something away or stopping something, and that serves to increase the behavior or strengthen the behavior. So an example of a negative reinforcer could be something like taking away chores. So your child is behaving appropriately, you want to increase their appropriate behavior, so you tell your child, you don't have to clean up after dinner. You don't have to do laundry as long as you maintain your appropriate behavior. So that taking away of the chores is the negative part, and taking away of the chores serves to increase their behavior or reinforce their behavior of behaving appropriately. Another example of negative reinforcement would be classes where if you have an A at the end of the semester, you don't have to take the final exam. So the professor takes away the final exam in order to increase your behavior of getting A's in the class. Also, the seatbelt sort of bell or chime that goes off in your car. So you get in your car, this chime is going off, it's annoying to you, you buckle your seatbelt, and that chime stops. So the behavior of buckling the seatbelt makes chime stop. So it takes something away, makes something stop. And as a result, your behavior of buckling your seatbelt when you get in the car increases. So the sound of that chime and the stopping of the chime serves as negative reinforcement to increase the behavior of buckling your seatbelt. Negative reinforcement can be classified in one of two categories. So there are two different types of negative reinforcement: escape and avoidance. With escape, something has already started, something that the organism generally finds as aversive, something they don't like typically. The behavior causes that thing they don't like to stop. And because it stops the thing that the organism doesn't like, it increases the likelihood that behavior will happen in the future. So the behavior of buckling your seatbelt is an escape behavior. The annoying chime is going, and because you buckle your seatbelt or show the behavior of buckling your seatbelt, it stops the chime. It allows you to escape the chime, and as a result, the behavior of buckling your seatbelt is going to increase in the future. So with escape, the thing that you find aversive has already started. Your behavior stops it, allows you to escape. With avoidance, performing the behavior stops the thing that you find aversive from ever starting. So it allows you to avoid the thing that you find aversive. An example of avoidance behavior would be if you take Lactaid before you eat ice cream. So you take the Lactaid and it allows you to completely avoid the experience of having a stomach ache. And because taking Lactaid allows you to avoid stomach aches, you're more likely to take Lactaid in the future. So with avoidance, you never have to experience the thing that you find aversive or unpleasant if you show the behavior. With escape, the thing you find aversive has already started, but the behavior makes it stop. So if taking Lactaid is an example of avoidance, the equivalent for escape would be taking milk of magnesia after you already have a stomach ache. So taking milk of magnesia after you have a stomach ache is negative reinforcement through escape. It makes the stomach ache stop. Taking Lactaid before you eat something that has dairy in it is avoidance because it allows you to totally avoid the aversive stimulus of having the stomach ache. People typically learn to escape, then they learn to avoid. So let's take the example of a route home that has lots of potholes. Initially, you may be driving down the street with lots of potholes, and you choose to turn off the street so that you escape the potholes. The behavior of turning off the street is reinforced by escaping from the potholes. So in the future, you're likely to show that behavior of turning off the street again. From then on, you learn that if you never go down that street at all, you never have to encounter the potholes at all. So that's going to increase the behavior of you taking a different route because it allows you to totally avoid the potholes. So first you learn to escape them, then you learn to avoid them. Both escape and avoidance are examples of negative reinforcement, taking away, stopping something, avoiding something that will then increase the likelihood of that behavior happening again. So the third type of consequence that can follow an operant behavior is positive punishment. This is giving something, adding something that will serve to weaken or decrease a behavior. Examples of positive punishment are things like spanking. You give your child a spanking to stop a behavior, to decrease a behavior. In the lab, electric shocks. So you want an animal to stop or decrease the behavior, you give them, so that's the positive part, you give them a shock. Chores can also be an example of a positive punishment. Your child is acting up, you want to stop or decrease that behavior, so you give them chores. You have to do chores in order to stop the behavior. So you see that chores can function as a positive punishment or a negative reinforcement. So giving chores, so that's the positive part because you're giving chores after a behavior that you want to decrease, will serve as positive punishment. You give them the chores to decrease the behavior. If you take away chores following a behavior that you want to increase, the taking away of the chores will increase the behavior that it follows. So your child's behaving appropriately. You take away chores to increase that appropriate behavior, negative reinforcement. Your child is behaving inappropriately. You give chores in order to decrease that behavior of behaving inappropriately. That would be positive punishment. And finally, the fourth type of consequence will be negative punishment. Here, you're taking something away, and that consequence of taking something away serves to weaken or decrease the behavior that it follows. So examples of negative punishment would be things like taking away privileges. Your child is being disruptive in school, so you take away their phone in order to decrease the disruptive behavior in school. So the negative part of that is that you're taking away the phone. You take away the video game in order to decrease the behavior of your child, fighting with their sibling or skipping class. Another example of negative punishment would be things like fines or tickets. And now think about something like you get a ticket. How is that negative? Because negative is about things being taken away. So how is getting a ticket or getting a fine a negative punishment? And the reason that getting a ticket or a fine is actually a negative punishment is that what do fines or tickets signify? What's punishing about them and what decreases the behavior is not the fact that you're getting a piece of paper that has a ticket or has an amount of money on it that you have to pay. What is punishing about those things is when you have a fine, you lose your money. Money's being taken away from you. When you get a ticket, that means either you're going to lose your money through paying the ticket or paying for offensive driving, or you're going to lose your time going to court to fight the ticket. So both fines and tickets are examples of negative punishment because you're losing money, you're losing time, and because you're losing your money or losing your time, it serves to decrease the behavior that it follows. So you speed, you get a ticket, you lose your money, your behavior of speeding decreases. You park illegally, you get a fine, you lose your money, your behavior of parking illegally decreases. Jail is also an example of negative punishment. What is punishing about jail? The idea of jail is that you lose your freedom. You lose time with your loved one. And because you're losing time with your loved ones, you're losing freedom, that should decrease whatever behavior earns you the consequence of going to jail. When it comes to children, another example of negative punishment would be things like time out. The thing that's supposed to be punishing about time out is that you're removing your child from things that they find enjoyable. So you're losing out on socializing with your friends. You're losing out on watching this TV show that you like. So as a result of taking those things away, you're going to decrease the behavior that led to the consequence of those privileges being taken away.